OpenAI took the entire tech world by surprise, but behind this pleasant surprise, it appears that a storm is gradually building up. A whole lot has been happening within the company, and from an observer's point of view, these are definitely not positive signs. In just a matter of days, CEO Sam Altman was fired and then rehired by the board as the company continues to show signs of an internal crisis.
What began as the firing of OpenAI CEO and co-founder Sam Altman on Friday is now a standoff between hundreds of OpenAI employees and the company's board.
The question then becomes, are we witnessing the beginning of the end of this multi-billion-dollar startup? Or is reality finally beginning to sink in as the effects of a previous mistake haunt the company? Well, let's take a look at the full story behind OpenAI's current leadership crisis.
I think it's going to be a great thing, but I think it's not going to be all a great thing.
On the 17th of November 2023, news broke out on the sack of OpenAI CEO and co-founder Sam Altman. The tech startup responsible for making the famous artificial intelligence chatbot ChatGPT announced that it was letting go of its CEO, who, in turn, was expected to join Microsoft, OpenAI's biggest investor.
I think, this maybe even increases the gap between Microsoft and others that are trying to compete.
Sam Altman, who had been with the company since its inception in 2015, was fired by the board in the most mysterious of circumstances as no concrete reason was given for the sack. According to the board, it no longer had confidence in Altman's ability to continue leading the company as he was not consistently candid in his communications with the board, hindering its ability to exercise its responsibilities. This announcement didn't go down well with staff and investors on the board. Hundreds of employees signed a letter threatening to leave the startup for Microsoft if the decision wasn't reversed. News also broke out that a number of investors like Microsoft, Tiger Global, Thrive Capital, and Sequoia Capital were working on reversing the decision. Following immense pressure from both employees and investors, the decision was reversed and Sam Altman was reinstated as the CEO, but not without some casualties, as board members who had been involved in ousting Altman were removed from the board.
The open rebellion and the idea that this company could disintegrate because the letter that I'm seeing from employees, it basically indicates that the company may dissolve.
Subsequently, co-founders Ilya Sutskever, Helen Toner, and Tasha McCauley lost their seats on the OpenAI board. On the other hand, former co-CEO of Salesforce Brett Taylor and former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers joined the board, with co-founder and CEO of Quora Adam D'Angelo retaining his position on OpenAI's board.
It was extraordinary to see somebody in their 80s and then in their 90s and then 100 years old looking to learn about AI.
But one cannot fully understand the reasons for the crisis rocking the startup without first going back to the company's beginning. In fact, the drama that finally unfolded had been boiling underneath for quite some time, and we can trace it to the company's unusual structure. Unlike what you find in most Silicon Valley startups, OpenAI wasn't structured like a regular corporation where a large amount of equity is controlled by the company's founder. In 2015, Sam Altman, Elon Musk, and others founded OpenAI as a non-profit research lab. The objective was to prioritize principles over profit, with the startup appearing like an anti-big tech company. Profit-making wasn't its primary aim, instead the focus was on developing AI tools to benefit humanity as a whole, unconstrained by a need to generate financial return.
I used to be close friends with Larry Page, and I would stay at his house, and we'd have these conversations long into the evening about AI, and I would be constantly urging him to be careful about the danger of AI.
But 3 years later, the company experienced some difficulties when in 2018, Elon Musk, who was an integral member of the startup, quit the board after investing $50 million. His action cut the then struggling startup off from a large chunk of its financial supply. Maintaining its position as a non-profit organization became even more difficult as its leaders finally accepted the harsh reality of the industry. Developing and maintaining artificial intelligence systems were incredibly expensive because they required massive amounts of computing power. This realization forced the startup to slightly deviate from its original principles. After Elon Musk left the startup, OpenAI launched a profit arm, which was essentially a capped profit entity. This meant that the possible profits of investors are capped at a specific amount, with any extra profit reinvested back into the company. But even with the creation of the profit arm, the non-profit board and its mission still ran the company, meaning that the company now had two sets of people with conflicting ideologies. While one sect favored the no-profit principles of the startup, remaining committed to serving humanity as against pleasing the shareholders, the other group preferred the company operated as a more traditional Silicon Valley corporation, leveraging money from investors to rapidly release consumer products with the hopes of becoming a market leader dominating a part of the industry. Now, this was when OpenAI's problems began.
It was really like, to do what we needed to go do, we had tried and failed enough to raise the money as a nonprofit. We didn't see a path forward there. So we needed some of the benefits of capitalism, but not too much.
However, this structural defect didn't pose much of a challenge then, as the startup was still largely under the radar. CEO Altman also tried to navigate through the apparent disparity in preferred business approaches by employing caution. He chose to gradually unveil OpenAI's tools, first to smaller groups, then to larger ones, before going ahead to make them public. This strategy appeared to be working perfectly until OpenAI launched ChatGPT in November 2022.
ChatGPT has been hailed as a game changer. Computers seem to be rapidly outsmarting their creators.
Sophisticated algorithms, but basically what these algorithms are doing is getting a lot of information from the internet.
Suddenly, OpenAI wasn't just another Silicon Valley startup, it was now a force to be reckoned with, attracting heavyweight investors. The startup's major investor, Microsoft, increased its stake in the company to the tune of $13 billion. But even though Microsoft became the company's biggest financial contributor, the nonprofit board still ran the affairs of OpenAI. Surprisingly, despite its major investments, Microsoft still didn't have a seat on the board. A board which has the unrestricted right to remove the CEO whenever it deemed fit. With the diverging views of the members of the board, one can see why the company experienced its recent crisis. Clearly, it was only a matter of time before the effects of these structural defects were seen. According to sources close to the board, long before his sack, CEO Altman had been at loggerheads with members of the board over the hasty commercialization of the company's products. Many of the board's members were concerned if Altman was considering the risks associated with AI products seriously enough, or he was just trying to maintain the company's dominant position in the already crowded and competitive world of generative AI development. For a company built on a non-profit foundation, one begins to wonder if CEO Altman was abandoning its principles in a bid to scale as fast as they could, signing up new customers quickly and gaining more control over the market without properly understanding the consequences, both to the firm and to the world at large. If that is the case, then maybe one can understand why a lot of the non-profit-inclined members of the board felt Altman was no longer suited to run OpenAI. There are also reports that at the time of his sack, Altman was working on a controversial new product that worried the research staff. Project Q, or Q-Star, is believed by many of OpenAI staff to be a breakthrough in its quest for what it terms Artificial General Intelligence, AGI, an autonomous system that will surpass human capabilities in most economically valuable tasks. But while some are excited, a number of employees, particularly the research team, were worried, and they expressed their worry in an anonymous letter to the board of directors. It is believed that the letter was warning the board about a powerful artificial intelligence that could threaten humanity. We implore you, the board of directors, to remain steadfast in your commitment to OpenAI's original mission and not succumb to the pressures of profit-driven interests, the letter reads. The future of artificial intelligence and the well-being of humanity depend on your unwavering commitment to ethical leadership and transparency. It is being reported that the new model, Q-Star, was able to solve certain mathematical problems. Artificial intelligence researchers consider mathematics as the frontier of generative AI development. With ChatGPT, it has already been proven that generative AI is good at writing and language translation through statistically predicting the next word. In writing, answers to the same question can vary, but with maths, there is almost always only one answer. This means that AI would have a reasoning capability that resembles human intelligence. Also, the AI would be able to generate, learn, and comprehend. But amongst AI researchers and computer scientists, there has long been discussions about the dangers posed by these highly intelligent machines and if they could eventually decide that the destruction of humans was their interest. However, beyond the threat of the destruction of humanity, very powerful artificial intelligence could result in massive job loss, human impersonation when in the hands of criminals, and supercharging the spread of disinformation amongst other dangers. Regardless of these dangers, Sam Altman, however, continued in his pursuit of more intelligent intelligent machines. A day before he was fired, he announced new tools for ChatGPT in a demonstration. Speaking at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, he said,
Like 4 times now in the history of OpenAI, the most recent time was just in the last couple of weeks. I've gotten to be in the room when we sort of like push the veil of ignorance back and the frontier of discovery forward. And getting to do that is like the professional honor of a lifetime.
Little did he know that the next day, the board was going to be the victim of a corporate coup. After Altman's sack, the board initially refused to entertain the possibility of the CEO's return. But when 702 out of the startup's 770 revolted against the decision and even threatened to leave, it made a U-turn. The employees also demanded that a new board be formed with Altman at the helm of affairs. Asides Altman, only one member of the previous board sits on the temporary new board, Adam D'Angelo, CEO of Quora. With Sam Altman back as CEO, OpenAI maintains its commitment to the development of artificial generative intelligence, AGI. The startup is, however, optimistic that this super intelligent AI will not cause any harm to humanity, even as it outperforms humans. But even with the new board, the company's dilemma continues. The board restates its commitment to developing AI for the benefit of humanity without focusing on turning a profit for external investors. Still, the profit entity of OpenAI continues to operate and attract investments from major corporate players interested in AI technology. The two opposite halves of OpenAI continue to coexist without a clear distinction between them. It is as if the company isn't sure of its mission anymore. For now, the temporary board with Sam Altman as CEO is saddled with the responsibility of scrutinizing the current structure of OpenAI. Also, the new board is expected to evolve to include a Microsoft representative, since Microsoft remains OpenAI's biggest investor. But will a company like Microsoft, whose profit-based model is responsible for its growth to becoming one of the most valuable companies in the world, sit on OpenAI's board and not try to influence decisions to favor quick scaling and commercialization? One can only watch and see.